Hi everyone, I'm Chris O'Neill from Sew the Distance. I hope you're doing well today. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, and if you're returning, welcome back. Today we're going to look at a red work quilt. It was made in 1933, and I know that because of the date in the medallion in the center. So it is, if you're not familiar with red work, it's an embroidery that's done with red floss or thread. This quilt is completely made by hand. So let's get started taking a closer look at this incredible gem of a quilt. So the first thing that you really notice about this quilt is the center medallion, which has the initials beautifully embroidered and the year. And this is just done meticulously. You can also see this deer medallion in the middle here with the flowers, and some of the wear from age is shown too, where some of the stitches have broke, but many of them haven't. There's also some fading on this quilt, so you'll see that some of the colors are much brighter than the other colors, and that just comes with wear and age. Just looking at the overall quilt, besides this wonderful medallion, you can see that it is hand stitched and it is actually hand pieced. So each one of these squares was done on a plain muslin background and stitched together and then quilted. What I think is really neat about this quilt is we know that the square was made first, of course, but the quilter, when they quilted this quilt, actually went underneath the stitch lines. So you don't see any of the quilting going over top of the actual medallions in each of these, which you know that took a lot of care, a lot of time, and a lot of thoughtfulness. The batting is a lightweight cotton, and again, I know that because I can peek inside. There's a hole that I can look into. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show all of these designs because they're all really wonderful, but I do want to show you a few of my favorites that are highlighted here. And one of them is this little girl jumping rope, and I find her so endearing, especially the way her hair is up in the air a little bit. She's almost mid-jump, and you can see there's some movement here with the ribbons on her dress. I just love that. Another favorite of mine is this guy. I love dogs, and I love this block. I love this block so much I want to duplicate it. I might have to trace it and actually do this one. Another favorite of mine is this one with the balloons. Now, this maker obviously used two different threads. One faded, one did not. And you can see this really well here. It probably was a dye that, you know, maybe wasn't as color fast at the time, and one held its color and one didn't. So I think that's interesting too. Another thing I want you to look at, you can see some shadowing, which I talked about last week a little bit. You can see some shadowing of the thread under here. So this maker actually traveled, it looks like, to the other design instead of tying off and cutting those threads, which is maybe something that we would, as makers, would like to avoid, because then you don't get this shadowing. I find it interesting on this quilt. It gives me some insight again on how this quilt was made, and like all these rules, is it really a big deal? Not really. So let's talk a little bit about the quilting. So there's this cross hatch quilting, and on the edges we have the scallops, and we have this beautiful rope quilting on the edges as well, on the borders. Also on the borders, the maker took some time to do some herringbone stitches here. A lot of them have worn off. The maker also did the same herringbone stitches on the binding. At first I thought they were just some threads that were loose, but then when you look at the other side, you can see that they actually were stitches, the herringbone stitches that we see. Now, something else I want you to notice about this incredible quilt is in the middle, right down the middle, is a fold line. You can see how dirty it is and how it's absolutely a fold line here. This was from storage, and unfortunately, it was probably even after this quilt would be retired, maybe not used anymore. It did gather some dirt there. It obviously was folded for an extended period of time. So as makers, we want to be careful with that, with our antique quilts and with our new quilts. Make sure you refold your quilts, or have a video showing how I store my quilts on a bed out of sunlight. Sunlight and creases like this can just really damage the quilt. We'll never get this out. I could try washing this quilt. I'd be afraid some of these red threads would run, but I could try it. Maybe I'll get brave and do that. But right now I don't think that we can get this fold line out of this quilt. The binding was put on separately, you can see here, and turned over. It is a bias binding. The bias binding's what gives us that wonderful scallop that the maker made. Overall, the condition of this quilt is pretty good, other than that one spot that has the fold lines. There are some stains. Again, I haven't tried washing this, so they may come out, they may not. Now on the corners, we see some, I don't know if they were testing out different designs or what exactly was happening here, but they're just interesting little tidbits of design. But on the opposite corner, there's the same thing. Okay, we see this design here that seems to be just some small medallions, and not only that, it's, I think, upside down. So it's the only block that was actually put into this quilt upside down. So the red work is done in what's called an outline stitch, or a back stitch or a stem stitch. It's just done beautifully. You can see the handwork. These stitches are perfect. It just speaks to the incredible craftsmanship of this maker. Same thing with the quilting stitches. I mean, they're just perfect. They're even and just not broken at all, and just in really wonderful shape. So lessons from this quilt, there's so many that we can choose from. If you're a new quilter or if you're an advanced quilter, you can take a lot from this quilt. So I narrowed it down to a few lessons. The first is that if you're going to be using embroidery, cut your threads and don't be tempted to travel to the next motif. Because it will shadow through eventually, or it could shadow through. And I like it in this quilt, but I don't think the maker ever intended for me to see, or us to see, those travel threads. And speaking of embroidery floss, make sure you have the same dye lot when you're working on a project like that, so you don't run into the issue of one fading or whatever discoloring over another. It's going to be fade or age at the same rate. And lastly, and probably most important of all the lessons we can learn, is to make sure if you're going to fold your quilts, that you go in and refold them occasionally and keep from getting a fold line in any of your quilts. You know, remember, we are working with fabric. Fabric is, and most of the time we're working with like a cotton fabric. It's a natural product. It is going to get damaged with stuff like that. And it's a shame that this has this fold line in it. And you know, it breaks my heart that I probably won't be able to get that fold line out or that dirt off of that because of the wear and because of the storage issues. And it's something that could have been avoided. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot from this quilt. I will post each motif after this video, and so you can see it. I'll just do a slideshow of each one, pictures of each one, and you can stay tuned and look at them if you want to. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.